Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And of course, as the captain's quarters are gone, we're going to do this one from the ship hangar. I'm not sure if I actually want to make the market window translucent or not. I think that on one hand it could be cool, it could add a little bit more animation and some background to EVE Talk. On the other hand, of course, without the translucence, things will be a lot clearer for the viewer. So I think for now we'll keep it at non-translucent and we'll see how it goes. Next up, maybe a quick mention also of the event that's currently happening in EVE Online, the Lucky Clash. I've been doing that, and personally I think that they're heading in the right direction with the event. Now this one is only 1 week long and it would take 4 days of completing all quests to get the final reward, so it's definitely a much smaller in scope, feels a lot less like a grind. And on the rewards aspects of it, the fact that they added this special little anomaly that is for the Lucky Clash, where you get a booster every time you do it, basically means that you have a bit more stuff to do if you want to get some loot or if you want to actually get some revenue out of the event. So from that perspective, I think that CCP is heading in the right direction. And well, also of course, these Lucky Clash sites, they may actually be some good sources for PvP in dangerous space like low sec, null sec and wormhole space. So overall, I definitely think that this is an improvement over the previous event. Maybe they can do that for like a couple of weeks as well, test it out, take a good look at their metrics, but I think that they're heading in the right direction. And this one is actually becomes a bit more noticeable, so we're gonna fix it like this. After that, I should also mention that it's the final weekend of the Alliance tournament, so if you want to watch some spaceship explosions and some elite PvP, definitely tune into that as well. And I think for the US viewers, you guys will have something pretty unique next week on Monday, normally a total solar eclipse, if you're lucky to be in that path. Pretty cool, I think. It's not exactly EVE related, but it's kind of a space related, and it's something that I personally do think is pretty cool. So keep that in mind if you have the chance. And now my bloody window here isn't exactly in the right spot. There we go, doing some on-the-fly fixing as well. Anyways, you are here for the market, of course, and as always, we're going to start with plex. It's gonna be at 250. There we go. And plex below 3 million, I think that's something that you should notice right away. It's been a pretty long time since we've had that. Plex down 8% pretty much. And this is of course due to a plex sale. And so what we can notice very clearly here is a massive drop off in the price. CCP is giving a 25% sale on a plex, and the volumes go up substantially as well. Of course, people taking that opportunity to get themselves some ISK from the economy by buying plex from CCP. Completely understandable. The real question, of course, is going to be what should you do with this as a potential investor. I think I'm probably going to buy some. Anything that I can buy below 3 million, I think is going to be pretty good when the winter expansion actually hits. So all of this, I think, is going to be pretty sharp here and won't stay for in this price range for very long. The fact that we have so little news about what's coming with the winter expansion, I think is maybe also accelerating the movement a little bit. There are not that many people looking out for or looking forward to a lot of the new stuff that's coming in EVE Online, maybe dying down the hype a little bit, and as a result we do have this very sharp drop here in plexes, and you can now buy plex price for less than 3 million. Still pretty expensive, of course, still very close to 1.5 billion, and I should probably go into the trade hubs as well. Well, for once now on the lower prices, the price isn't that different from JITA prices. So we've got 2,983,000 in JITA itself, 2,950,000 one jump out in Ikuchi, and pretty much the same to 954 in perimeter as well, where 1,700 of them are being dumped. So this is of course CCP intervention dropping down the prices. buyers are at 2.9 million, so you can definitely pick some plex up at less than 3 million. And then of course, if you can get back to 3.3 million, that's an easy way to spot 10%. And as a result, potentially you can be sitting pretty good. This might be an investment opportunity if, like me, you do expect a lot of excitement towards the winter expansion, much demand as well for these plexes, and as a result, potentially an increase in price. One thing to keep in mind: 3 million for a plex is still 1.5 billion for an old 30-day plex, which is still very expensive historically speaking. Next up, we'll take a look at the multiple pilot training certificate. That one is then going up in price a little bit, which I think is normal, because of course there is no on normal circumstances, if everything is being sold at the same price by CCP, there's actually a bit of a discount on the pilot training certificate. But with plex being discounted at 25%, that means that that margin is gone, and as a result, while plexes are going down, there is a bit of a bounce back in the multiple pilot training certificate, probably also because interest is just away from these, so demand is lower, well, which should lower the price. So that doesn't make sense actually, but yeah, I think this is basically counterbalance because of the margin being gone between the training certificates and plexes themselves. Next up, we've got skill extractors. Yep, that of course follows plex prices very closely, and then the impact on the skill injectors is going to be quite interesting. But at the moment, skill extractors are being sold for 329 million ISK, below 330. You know, 330 for 3 million on the plex prices. You know, we're starting to get to know the price ranges that are linked to each other, and the buyers are at 321 million. Again, a pretty narrow margin between the buyers and the sellers, which is normal, of course, on a fast and sharp downward price move like this one here. Now, the real question, of course, is going to be skill injectors. What is the impact here? And this is very interesting. It's actually bouncing off of the 750 million mark, and you don't see that same very sharp decline. You do see an increase in volumes a little bit, but large scale injectors still going for 663 million ISK, and the buyers are still at 752 million ISK, above 750. That is quite significant. That does mean that the skill point farms are having a really good time at the moment, because their margin has increased and demand for skill points is still very high across the game. So maybe it's because of the war and that we've got some alpha clones that do want to get into certain chips. Maybe in the war there are some of the bigger sites that are preparing specific doctrines, possibly capital doctrines and things like that. But it is showing that there is this very strong demand. What is happening at the moment in EVE Online? It would be the war, and so this is very important. I think first time that we're seeing this potential link between large scale injectors and an in-game activity such as a big Nosek war, where war does seem to increase the demand for skill points themselves. Thus, very good times for skill point farms and the sellers of large scale injectors compared to those that are holding plex at the moment and would want to sell. The small scale injectors are pretty much a similar pattern, so it's starting to be a better chart, but it still have a long way to go, I think. So this is probably around 3 months. Yeah, we still have 9 months to go until we get a 1-year chart. But you can see the same bouncing off here, and it's off of around 160 million, 152 million for the sellers, 148 million for the buyers. So yeah, the chart is still not really very clear because it's actually at 152, which should be around here. So yeah, let's give this chart a little bit of time to mature, and then we'll probably see that correlation between the large and the small scale injectors, and then possibly depending on the type of demand for skill points and maybe alpha clone activity, we'll see a discrepancy, a difference between these two. But of course, if market forces are very strong and the traders are up to snuff, which in EVE Online they really are, then I think we'll see this hardly move from one another. But yeah, it's still pretty interesting to have these small scale injectors, and I think that they could be indicators, if they do start to move differently from the large scale injectors, to certain aspects of the game or certain aspects of the health of the game as well. So it's still one that we're definitely going to keep an eye on as well. Next up, we have some minerals. That's going to be at 10 minutes. All right, on the dot. Pretty good. Let's start with titanium. Good news here again for miners, despite the dip that you're seeing here at the very tail end on the charts, probably because of this anomalous data point so far. The titanium suppliers are at 597. It was 596 a few moments ago. Which is still definitely really a good price for titanium when we look at this full 1 year chart. You can see the Ascension expansion here in November crashing the price down to less than 4 ISK, and now we have this resurgence back towards 6 ISK, probably mostly thanks to the war. And as a result here, 597 for the sellers, 596 for the first buyer as well. That is quite unusual. This is very likely, it's 71 million units as well. This is very likely to push the sellers above 6 ISK at some point. So very strong demand in titanium at the moment. Very good news, I would say, for high-sec miners. You can once again go for some Velspar asteroids, get that titanium, and actually get a decent ISK per hour compared to some of the other minerals out there, especially compared to Mexilon. So we can say that titanium is coming back into the interesting territory when it comes to the price. Even historically speaking, 6 ISK is an okay price for titanium. A really good price used to be 7 to 8. That was an awesome price for titanium, but 6 is definitely, even compared to before the Ascension expansion, the Orcal changes, the Orca changes, this is an okay price for titanium. Next up, pyrite. Are the others following suit? And finally, we are seeing a second attempt, you could say, here in mid-June. Pyrite also tried to get to 6 ISK, but was squashed down by a massive volume supply here all of a sudden. And now we're trying again. Pyrite currently being sold for 625, a little bit more than titanium. And so my prediction from a couple of weeks ago that it was unnatural for titanium to be higher than pyrite turns out to be right. Everything that you could have bought here was probably a really good buy, especially if this trend can continue for a couple more weeks. So 625 for the sellers of pyrite, and the buyers are coming in at 606. So this is starting to normalize and under pressure from what's happening with titanium. Now pyrite is also going up in a price. Still has a long way to go up until the 8 to 9 ISK, which we would like to see so that we would have pre-ascension prices, but at least it's a start right here. And again, a little bit better for us high-sec miners when it comes to what we're making out of our asteroids. Next up, we've got Mexilon, which is plateauing at 80 ISK. Definitely a really good price, even for compared to before Ascension. This was an incredibly good price for Mexilon. So 80.5 ISK for the sellers and 75.41 for the buyers. Bit more margin on this one, which is normal when we're seeing this plateau action. But yes, still, if you can, then prioritize your Mexilon sources, because 80 ISK for the Mexilon is definitely a really good price. And then, you know, Mexilon and titanium are in decent places at the moment. So this one, it is normal that will drop off a little bit. The market won't sustain prices that are much higher than 80 ISK, especially if you compare where stuff like pyrite and isogens are, but this is an incredibly good price for Mexilon. I don't think that you should hesitate mining, even in high-sec mining for Mexilon. You'll have some titanium on the side. Selling those to the market right now, I think, makes sense. And I don't think that you should hesitate at the moment. Should I still build up some stocks in these minerals? If you don't use them, definitely sell these two to the market. Next up here, we've got isogen, trying but really not succeeding in going up. So we went up to 54 ISK, but we're already going back down towards 50 ISK. So isogen is still apparently the one that has the major stocks, the major oversupply available even to traders within this place, within the region of Jita as well. And as a result, isogen is still below 50 ISK. Isogen used to be more expensive than Mexilon, so I am still here of the idea that this could be an incredible buy opportunity for isogen. Don't go overboard. I'm still just basically keeping my stocks of isogen. There's also a little bit of isogen that I'm producing myself from the mining that I'm doing in Dital, and I'm keeping that for myself, but I still think that this isn't a natural situation that at some point is going to rectify itself, because isogen is less plentiful than Mexalon, especially when you're mining for it in HiSec. And as a result, this 50 ISK compared to 80 ISK is something that should switch back if we get back to a bit of more normal mineral market. So do with that information what you want. I wouldn't spend billions on that. I'm personally more of I'm gonna keep my stocks. I'm definitely not selling my isogen at these prices. Maybe I'll buy a little bit, you know, just a little bit below 50 ISK. I think could be okay if I have the extra ISK, but don't go completely crazy. Still, I think that there is this potential. Isogen at 50 used to always be more expensive than Mexalon, which is currently being traded at 80 ISK. I understand that it's the bottleneck in nullsec production, and thus there is this much stronger demand, but supply from HiSec should not be that insignificant that this difference should be this big, I think. Yeah, HiSec can make a lot more Mexalon than it can make isogen normally. Next up, we've got the nullsec one, so let's take a look at Zydrine. Bit delayed compared to Megasite, which has already gone up substantially, but here we go. Zydrine currently selling for 1,210 ISK, and the buyers are at 1,171, and last week we could have bought this for around 1,000 ISK, and I always said there that while I wouldn't consider that to be a great investment, especially if you're planning to use some of it, definitely buy that isogen at 1,000 ISK, because that's a pretty damn good price. And here we go, 20% increase in price in a matter of around a week, and as a result that would have been a really good buy even to sell here. So as long as you don't go crazy with the volumes, I say this in almost every ETH talk, but I think it's definitely true. As long as you don't go crazy with the volumes, you know, you can spot these good opportunities, and Zydrine was one which was also a little bit predictable, considering that Megasite had done this before as well, and it's actually pulling back a little bit, currently at 1,300 for the sellers and 1,230 for the buyers. And on this note, I should also mention, let's see if I can actually spot it on the chart. So we're talking about Zydrine here that has gone up to 1,300 and then traded for 1,000 ISK for quite a while here, 1,100. So I think it was after Ascension that we had the same inversion in Megasite here. In November went for 1,000 ISK, and then we had Zydrine that went just below 1,000 ISK. Let's see if they crossed at some point. So Megasite then went up to 1,500 in June, back down below 1,200, and then Zydrine. I'm not spotting it right away, but I clearly remember that at some point we had the exact same situation that we still have now with isogen and Mexalon, where Zydrine was actually more expensive than Megasite. And you can now see that that has rectified itself, where Megasite is going for 1,300 and Zydrine is going for 1,200. And this is more a normal situation for these two minerals compared to each other, whereas isogen for 50 and again Mexalon for 80 is completely unnatural, and that is something that I think there is potential in that. It's something to definitely keep in mind when it comes to what we're doing with our minerals. And as I said, Mexalon definitely sell, get a really great price there. Titanium as well. Pyrite, you could start to consider it because of how difficult it's had a time to actually get up there. And then isogen, though, I wouldn't sell those. I would wait for a better price. I think, naturally speaking, if we're seeing at what's everything else that's happening in the mineral market, that should happen. And then finally, we also have Morphite that is finally getting back to 10,000 ISK. That is pretty good. 10,000 for the sellers, 9,800 for the buyers. And a couple of weeks ago, we could still have bought these for like less than 9,000 ISK. And here I think it's once again the war effect. Maybe some more interceptor and stealth bomber fleets are getting blown up, and as a result a bit more demand for Morphite. Again, war is good for business in EVE Online, definitely in the mineral market. We're seeing that effect here, that there is stronger demand, and as a result yeah, we could have done some really good business. And I think I have a bit of Morphite here that I'm not exactly sure. I'll still keep a bit of an eye on it. You you don't want to go crazy either on the first increase in price. So we have to keep an eye on what's happening with the war as well. But there is this slight sell opportunity at the moment in Morphite. Could there potentially be more later on? I still think yes, the winter expansion could be very interesting as well when it comes to the demand of all of the minerals because of the potential conflict that it will create. As I've said, I do expect some movements around the faction citadels, some moves there, some action, and as a result it may be too early to sell, but also to keep in mind 9,000 to 10,000 is a nice increase in price in Morphite as well. So potentially, if you want to get rid of the stocks now, you can definitely do so as well. Moving on to some PI, so 2015. I would say definitely pretty good strong week in minerals except for Isogen. Let's see what our PI goods are doing. Here are the construction blocks, basically sideways below 1200 ISK, 13,000 ISK, sorry, and yeah, a little bit of pressure maybe at the very tail end. Sellers, yeah, are coming in at 12,800. Maybe a little bit above average, but not much anymore. And the buyers are at 12,200, which is around average, I would say, for construction blocks. Basically, I think that we're a bit above average if we really look back a year ago, but a little bit of inflation in there. I think this is a normal price for construction blocks. Consumer electronics next. Let's take a look at these. Had very strong April, May and June, basically a triple top here above 16,000 ISK. That's definitely not bad for consumer electronics. Then we had to pull back a little bit. We came back to a more average price of 13,500. I would still call that above average. And here we're actually climbing again. Currently consumer electronics selling for 14,500. So this climb has already stopped. We'll pull back a little bit from this on the chart, but 14,500 still definitely above average in my opinion. 14,000 for the buyers as well. Definitely not a bad time for the producers of consumer electronics. Coolants next, fuel related. We can see that we try to go back up a little bit towards 13,000 ISK, but we're calming down. We're definitely settling down here, which if you look at the ticker below, you can also see that the fuel prices are not going crazy just yet. So coolant staying below 13,000 on average, 13,200 for the sellers, 12,200 for the buyers. Pretty wide margin to be spotted here. I would say buyers are close to the average, sellers are a bit above average. And this could start swinging up and down a little bit, basically bouncing off of the old averages, mostly on the sellers. So coolants, there is strong demand here, but it's not exceptional at the moment either. You're a bit above average on the seller side. Enriched uranium next, fuel related. Interesting to see that pullback going back down to 15,000 ISK. It is still a really good price, but I would say enriched uranium is one of the tougher ones to make. So 15,300 for the sellers, 14,300 for the buyers. You should definitely note that compared to coolants, this is you're paying a bit of a premium for enriched uranium because it's not that easy to produce it. And I would say here that probably both the buyers and the sellers are a bit above average. 15,000 is definitely a pretty good price for a refined PI material here, and you can see that we dipped to 12,500 as the low point, so maybe something in the range of 13 to 14,000 would be the average price. We're definitely, again, for a fuel related one, paying a bit above that, but not by all that much at this point. So I actually feel like this is okay for stable fuel prices. Next up we have the integrity response drones. After last week's dive to 2.5 million, unfortunately the market response has been alright, let's pick up those cheap integrity response drones, and so the sellers are back up to 2.6 million and the buyers are up a little bit above 2.5 million. So it's very tricky for the integrity response drones to really create a very nice buy opportunity for us. There is a lot of interest in what's going to happen with the structures. I think a lot of them are blowing up as well in the war, and as a result there is this demand, and there are these people that are clearly looking out for these opportunities to buy them, and they are very short-lived. Anything that I would not consider very cheap, I wouldn't consider that a standout opportunity, but anything that comes into range of the 2.5 million apparently gets picked up right away. Next up we get mechanical parts. This is interesting again, mechanical parts related to fuels. We went down to 11,000 ISK here, so that was, I would say, below average for mechanical parts. This is a very weird chart, but if you remember, mechanical parts has basically known this increase in price towards its April top for around a year, basically 1 year straight of increased prices. After that we fell back to 11, even 10,000 ISK on a couple of days, and now we're actually going back up, but we are selling for 13,500. Definitely a bit above average. Mechanical parts are not that difficult to produce on barren planets. The bars are at 12,600, again a bit above average. The margin is not as wide as in coolants, and I would definitely compare mechanical parts to coolants, but this increase in price here is not that dramatic just yet. We're basically, just like with coolants and enriched uranium, a little bit above average for these fuel related PI prices, but nothing that I think will drive fuel prices up substantially at the moment. Next up, nuclear reactors. That one is basically flattening off at the current trade range. 126,000 ISK for the sellers, 112,000 ISK for the first buyer. What I am seeing here is that the buyers, there's not that many of them, and so this could be, while these nuclear reactors have a bit more of a swing up and below 100,000 ISK. And so if we go back below 100,000 ISK, doesn't take that much on the buyer side of things, so a bit more supply coming in here. 2 sellers getting filled. There we go, we're talking about buyers at 86,000, definitely a great opportunity. So these nuclear reactors are apparently not on the radar of that many people, which creates a bit more volatility, a bit more of these sharp drops down, like here, and like here, that create incredible, although small, and definitely a small window, but they create very nice buy opportunities in the nuclear reactors. I mean, if you could have bought this for 90,000 and you can sell them for 126,000, definitely pretty damn good here. So nuclear reactors, one to keep an eye on, because there is a decent amount of supply. I think, well, not that much, but here 81 days ago, that was definitely a big jump in supply. That's flattened the chart. 82 days ago, even more coming in. So if we have more supply and these two get filled up, look out, this could go down very quickly into a buy opportunity. And at the moment, of course, nuclear reactors are definitely above average when it comes to selling. Oxygen next. Managing to come back. All right, still more than 500 ISK at the moment. 509 ISK for the sellers, 478 for the buyers. Fuel related, a bit above average, not by that much. 450, I would say that that's the average. So again, it's not all that dramatic. I don't think that oxygen can push something like a 20% increase all of a sudden, or even a 50% increase. I don't think that oxygen basically can go crazy up to 600 or 700 because it's so easily produced. It's only a processed material. So at the moment we're at the high end, which puts it at a bit above average. Pretty strong demand for fuel related stuff apparently. Robotics next. Very similar, actually also related to fuels. And here we're talking about robotics going back down to 100,000 ISK, which I was still considering to be a little bit above average. Robotics 95,000, I would say, used to be a normal price for robotics, but I guess a little bit of inflation in the game. 100,000 ISK is actually the new average, and here again we can see the slight jump up in a fuel related PI material. 112,000 for the sellers, 104,000 for the buyers. Both of these a little bit above average once again. So this might push up fuels a little bit, but I don't think it's that dramatic. If you would see this again go to 120, and then you would see coolant spike up as well, look out then. Of course, that's going to have an impact on fuels. At the moment, I think this is still manageable. Rocket fuel next. Back up to 12,500. That's okay. 13,000 for the sellers, 12,100 for the buyers. Very pretty wide margin here, but this is okay. This is a little bit above average for the sellers, probably around average for the buyers. And we had the slight sell opportunity, so some volatility in the crazy rocket fuels. I would definitely call them that. If you look at these median daily prices, they are so all over the place. How can you go from 16,300 and then down to 12,600 in a matter of maybe 4 or 5 days? And here again, you've got a day where you're at 13k, and then the next day you're at 14.75k. So this is a really weird one where on individual days someone just basically comes in and buys a lot of rocket fuel right from the market, and then the next day someone else comes in and just starts filling in buy orders. That's basically what we're seeing here on these median daily prices. The difference between those two volumes must be so great on individual days that you've got this weird pattern of the median daily prices jumping down to 11k, back up 12.30k, back down to 11k. This is just very, very unusual. You would usually see on downward slopes a clear pattern where your median daily prices would still be going down, but no, we're still shooting up, So this is a very unusual one, but it's nice to see a bit of volatility back in this one, and basically at the moment, again, a little bit above average. Next up, we've got the self-harmonizing power cores. That is nice, but again, I fear it will be short-lived. So a nice little pullback in the works here, currently being sold for 2.25 million, and the buyers are at 2.12 million. But you can see here another 2,000 being bought, another 1,000 being bought. 2 million probably won't come back into play at the moment. If you want to buy some self-harmonizing power cores, look into the buy orders, and there's strong competition though. There's a lot of demand for these. Superconductors next, actually going up in price to 15,000 ISK. Yep, definitely. 14,500 for the sellers, 13,200 for the buyers. A bit more than a little bit above average. I would say that this is basically above average for both the sellers and the buyers. So superconductors in a pretty good spot, I think, if you want to sell some. The sculptures next, the one that I need to go up is slightly going up, but still not volatile enough for me to actually sell, although some average prices want to go towards 9,000 ISK, currently being sold for 8,600, buyers are still at 7,600, pretty low and consistently low market for test sculptures. I've picked up a couple 100 million of these, and I'm waiting for the volatility to come back. This is really the standout material here that has shown the potential to double in price, but has remained very stable and very low for quite a few months now. And finally, we have the wetware mainframes, exact opposite for self-harmonizing power cores, increased volumes, increased prices. It indicates very strong demand for these, and wetware mainframes has been, in my experience, the bottleneck when it comes to structured production. So these are up to 2.6 million, even more than that, and 2.5 million for the buyers. Basically, this was at the end of June, this was your buy opportunity, close to 2 million, and it really doesn't look like we'll get another one before the winter expansion. I don't think it's going to be possible anymore. There is just this strong demand, and any opportunities are going to get picked up too quickly for us, unfortunately. And next up, we'll move on to some Tech 1 chips, 3220. There we go. And let's take a look here at the Abaddon. Also, again, going back up in price. I did see an Abaddon fleet on the final, on like the fourth Fortisar, I think, in Hakonen. So there must be some interest in flying those as well, not just from CVA. You can also see the volumes go up. So currently Abaddon's going for 200 million and the buyers are at 182 million. So it seems that there is an Abaddon meta happening in Nosek at the moment. I thought it was going to be exclusively CVA, but apparently that may not be the case. And as a result, good time to produce Abaddons. Next up here we got the Caracal finally shooting up. This to me is pretty interesting, back above 10 million I'm sure. On the seller side, yet 10.6 million, not that many available anymore. 9.7 million for the buyers, so it's very hard in Tech 1 markets to get the buyers to go up in price. I think they went up by like 200,000, while the sellers have gone up by 6, 7 or maybe even more 100,000. Is definitely a pretty big difference, but you can see here a big buy, a big volume buy for a Caracal fleet, which is of course related to the war, and it's good to see that interest. Unfortunately, I think by next week we'll see that unless there's a lot more buying happening, that this will drop off very sharply. But the Caracal is in a pretty good spot here as well at the moment. If you can bring some to the market quickly, you should consider doing so. The Covetor, yeah, very flat. That one is definitely not in the Nosek meta at the moment. I don't see fleets of Covetors going to fight around structures. So these are being sold for 26.4 million and the buyers are at 23.6 million. Not much to say, basically very flat despite higher mineral prices though. Next up here we got the Ferox, and this is unfortunately the pattern that we'll see. Last week we saw that, yeah, very nice Ferox being flown in nullsec, so we go up to 65 million ISK, but the industrialists, there just is all of that Tick 1 potential out there, and they spot that very quickly, and so they drive the price back down towards 50 million, 53.5 million for the sellers, 47.1 for the buyers. They basically don't have to budge. All you need as a buyer is a bit of patience, whether that storm maybe lasts a week or a bit more on the bigger ships, and then you're good to go. You'll pick up these cheap Feroxes once again, and then of course here over the last couple of weeks 129, then we're coming in with 48, another 80, and we're going down very quickly from 77 to 70 million to 60 million to 58 million to 55 million here, and then now down to 53.5 million, which again is squeezing the margins very quickly. Keep this in mind when you're seeing something like this Caracal increase in price. The Ferox chart is very likely to show you what's going to happen next. Here we've got the Hurricane, also went up, and Hurricane I think not flown as much as the Ferox, and as a result, yeah, it's basically right back where we started off. Hurricane being sold now for 51.6 million, another 42 coming in as the latest sell order. Buyers are at 45 million. They didn't have to move despite this increase in price. Maelstrom also went up in price a little bit, also back down. This was not even, I think, gonna be related to war buying. So here the Maelstrom, 170 million for the sellers, 150 for the buyers. Very cheap at the moment. The Megatron next, that is probably a little bit of war buying here that drove the price back up, but of course keep in mind we were talking about price at 150 million, very cheap Megatrons then. Currently being sold for 170, buyers are at 150. Again, those guys just won't budge, that's just not gonna happen. But when the sellers keep coming in and they keep driving down the margins towards that 150, that's of course when probably an alliance comes in and says, alright, you know what, we'll buy 100 Megatrons, everything below 170, and then we'll have a fleet ready if we want to. Most of them close to 150 are really cheap anyways. So that's basically what's happening here. The Prophecy next, also trying to go up a little bit, but staying at 55 million, so not that much to report. 57 for the sellers, not that many of them here. 52.2 for one buyer, then they're back below 50 million. So again, this clearly shows that, yeah, prices can go up, but the opportunities get filled very quickly, and it's very difficult to get the buyers to go up in price here, because I'm pretty sure that someone is just going to sell one Prophecy at 52.2 million, and then we're back here on the really cheap ones below 50 million. The Scorpion next, up in price a little bit, slight volume increase as well. There were just very few of them, and I think basically a little bit of opportunistic buying here. I'm not really seeing this as being a massive nullsec related buy or anything like that either. And then finally we've got the Fake Zor that is just doing its thing, just above 10 million, currently being sold for 10.3, buyers are at 9.3 as well. So the Tick 1 market, I'll quickly touch on it. We'll take a look at the Typhoon, which last week went really up in price quite substantially, on of course the Imperium, flying and losing quite a few Typhoon fleets. But again, look at this response, we go up very nicely towards 200 million. Finally we can make some money on these Typhoons, and then of course we go back down because the demand tapers off, but the supply comes in very quickly. We're back to 178 for the sellers, 153 for the buyers. They've been driven up a little bit, but you can also see that they've been driven up on a substantial increase and a decently sustained increase in volumes as well. And then of course, you know, they start coming in here 204, 200, then they quickly go to 194, 186, 185, 180, 179, 178. You can see that just the supply can be brought back so quickly that these increased prices, they just basically don't really have the chance to remain high for very long. So that's what I want to show you guys with the Tech 1 market. Let's move on to the Tech 2 market at 38.45. And here is the Ares. We'll probably have a similar situation for now in the Tech 2 markets. where we do have spikes here, but the area is still being sold. So we had a nice spike up to 30 million, even more on average here, 34 million. That was incredible. If you could have bought this for like 21 million, not bad at all. But again, this does go back down very quickly. Area is currently being sold for 25.4 million. Still not that bad, and the buyers are up a bit to 22.7 million. So here on the Tech 2 market, I would say that if the war doesn't last that long, then we'll have the same pattern as the Tech 1s, where stocks of investors out there will plug these gaps decently quickly. But I do think that with the moon mining changes coming and with it being Tech 2, that we could run into bottlenecks if they're being flown a lot and lost a lot. And if that keeps going for several more weeks, and if we get more conflict towards the winter expansion for the faction citadels, then I would say that, yeah, look out, we may actually get those sustained higher prices in some of these Tech 2 ships as well. And so that is just, I think right now, yeah, we'll have the same pattern as with Tech 1 ships, but it is going to be different if it remains for a longer period of time in the Tech 2 market, I think. The Claw next, very similar of course, went up to even 50 million for an interceptor, currently being sold for 29.7 million. Definitely still a really good price. If you're a bit late to the party, you can definitely still sell them, but this is what we're seeing right now. Of course, 300 of them being brought to the market. Bars are 27 million as well, definitely up in price. But if a lot of these keep being flown and lost, keep in mind this will start to dwindle down, and then we'll have sustained higher prices. The Crow next, up in price as well on a big volume spike at 30 million, still being sold for 29, buyers up to 26 million, so definitely this increased in price. And now we're seeing the big volumes here, we do have 100 of them trying to be sold just below 30 million, another 38, another 62, so again, keep that in mind. Next up here we get the Ares actually going up in price, not bad, heading towards 60 million. Pretty much 59.6 for the sellers, 48 million for the buyers. This is pretty recent that the Ares went up in price. It's mostly action on the seller side. The buyers are still not forced up that much. And the interesting thing is going to be, of course, if this is more sustained because of Tech 2 losses in general, then yeah, the buyers may be forced up here once again as well. Next up we've got the Flycatcher, also up slightly, going for 75 million, 74 for the sellers, 67.9 for the buyers. Next up we've got the Heretic, that is very nice, another interdictor that went up in price substantially, up to almost 70 million. That was a slight opportunity, a risky one because you had to take off at 55 million, but definitely a slight opportunity, currently being sold for 67 million. Buyers are at 53.5 million. So here, nice sell opportunity in the Heretic at the moment. Next up here we got the Hound doing a double bounce. So this is what I think will then start to happen, of course. We went up to almost 50 million for the Hounds, currently still being sold at 35 million, 24.5 for the buyers. But you can see currently being sold for 35 million. That here at 26.4 million, someone still came in and says, I need more hounds for my fleets, or I need more hounds to be ready, and sell them at a better price. And as a result, you get this. This is the difference that you'll start to see, that will bounce off of higher prices, and this will in general be forcing the buyers to go up in price as well. And so we'll have sustained higher prices in the Tech 2 market the longer the war goes on. With potentially, of course, if then the wrong fleets gets destroyed and needs to be replaced right away, that's when the real opportunities may come in, of course. Malediction next, also going up to 30 million for an interceptor, 30 for the sellers, 27 for the buyers. Next up we get the Manticore. This is exactly pretty much what I was talking about here. Went up to 40 million. Currently there are almost none of them. 36.5 for the first seller here, 27 million for the buyers. 21 to 22 million were the bottom prices here, so you can see that these are being forced up. And in the stealth bomber market, apparently this is where we're starting to see that pattern first. Next up we've got the Nemesis, also doing a bit of a double bounce at 26 million, currently being sold for 40 million for the Nemesis. So last week it was interceptors, this week it's definitely the stealth bombers that are winning out. And again, the market cannot sustain this, especially if there are a lot of losses, a lot of destruction in these wars. Then we will start to see some really nice opportunities as well, some more volatility, which is great for us traders. And next up here we got the Purifier. That one is doing it a little bit differently, went up to almost 40 million, 38 here on average, and it's actually flattening out at the 37 million range. So, oh, and actually coming in with lots of, is that correct then? Oh, 27, I'm sorry, I saw wrongly on the chart here. Yeah, flattening out at around 27 to 28 million for the sellers, 25 million for the buyers, definitely up on those buyers here. And finally we've got the Saber, which is going for 55 million, not really moving too much. So here I think that all of these weeks and months of ETH Talk where I said, you know, spot these buy opportunities, you need that longer horizon, because we'll need a Nosec war, we'll need something to happen in Nosec for these to really create these sell opportunities. Well, here we are, right? For all these months, if you did take advantage of these sell opportunities, this is your time now to look at those buy opportunities. I'm sorry, you know, here 21 million on average. That means that Aries have been sold for less than 20 million to some of you buyers, and as a result, this is the patience that I was talking about. We're talking about a whole year with difficult conditions, but now the war is here, and selling for 30-40 million is sometimes possible. Last week it was great for the interceptors, this week it's great for the stealth bombers, and that was exactly what I was talking about, and that is a big part as to why I make ETH Talk, is to try and show you guys these opportunities, these patterns that do exist in the game. And right now, Take 2, a great time to keep a close eye on your stocks that which you will hopefully have bought over this last year whenever I mentioned a buy opportunity, and this is when you're making quite a bit of ISK on those. Next up, we've got the Tech 3 market at 46 minutes. And here again, I felt it was really risky, because here you're seeing this very unusual pattern of massive oversupply, very sustained massive oversupply at 30 million for a long time. But the Confessor here on another war up in price, currently still being sold for 50 million, so that's 20 million more than what you could have easily bought them for a couple months ago, and the bars are up to 50 million as well. So this is the war, and apparently the tactical destroyers, you can definitely put them in there as well. They're, I think, considered to be cheap enough and good enough to be flown in massive fleets as well. So we've got the Confessor. Here is the Hecate, currently being sold for 61 million. That's double the price from this oversupply here in June. That's really, really nice. And the buyers are up to 53 million for the Hecate. Next up, we've got the Jackdaw. Here we went up a little bit too much, over 100 million. That is crazy. And now we are down to 87.5 million. That's almost still triple the price of what you could have bought these for in June. And the buyers are up to 71 million ISK on Jackdaws. Really crazy prices. It is one that I felt was always really risky. Because of course, if unfortunately CCP would then come out with a bit of a nerf or something, or they would really not come in the meta, then this could have still been a really bad buy. It looked like, you know, where is this going? I mean, we're just staying at these bottom prices, this oversupply by hundreds of ships. Should I keep buying? And the answer was here, once again, just like with the Tech 2 market, yeah, buy slowly, don't go crazy. But have the patience to wait for Nosec action, and then here you could have made 200% on Jackdaws. And then this Vapul, yeah, a little bit less popular at the moment, but still going for 50 million, so 20 million on a 30 million buy, not bad either. Now when it comes to the cruisers, we of course have the rebalance in here as well, and I haven't seen them in Hakone. I'm not sure how much these Tech 3 cruisers are being flown in Nosec at the moment, but we've got this a bit more this volatility. So you can see the Legion going up to 200 million, back down to like 140, back up, back down here. It's a tricky situation here. 159 for the sellers, 153 for the buyers. So here market forces in the strategic cruiser market are causing, yeah, a bit of a disruption and some uncertainty, I would say. I couldn't predict to you guys where we're going next with the cruisers. Because here's the Loki, the big winner of the rebalance, up to 245 million. and then the buyers are at 222. This is clearly the winner of what's been happening and what's still happening at the moment in the Tech 3 cruiser market. The Legion is not bad, right? Bottom price like 110, 115. Currently being sold for 160 is not bad. I would say that I think the Proteus is worst off here, still being sold for 127, and then the buyers are at 115. And then finally here we've got the Tengu that is up to 150 as well. Yeah, 155 for the sellers, 145 for the buyers. Actually not bad for the Tengu, that went really low as well, towards like 110 as well. So the Tech 3 cruiser market is a bit more of a mixed bag. I think that basically the game and the economy are still absorbing the changes, and that maybe Nullstick doesn't know exactly what to do with these cruisers just yet. They're a bit they feel like it's a bit risky to just put those out in the meta, because that could of course backfire quite substantially at the moment if for some reason, you know, there's something that they didn't take into account and that make them very vulnerable to some of the current metas. I think that's basically what's happening here, and it means more volatility, which can be quite interesting. It also means that we have a big difference between the Loki going for 250 and the Proteus going for 127. If I would say that if you're looking for that investment opportunity, then of course look at this big difference between what the Proteus is doing and what all the others are doing. Hope that maybe CCP intervenes, or that someone in Nullstick finds a use for the Proteus, and then this would be your buy opportunity, of course. So that's it for the Tech 3 market. And yeah, the cruisers here, Tech 3 cruisers, are definitely still in the winner brackets for 2 weeks straight here, although the stealth bombers did really well this week as well. And for the extra material, we're going to once again take a look at the advanced moon materials. That's going to be at 5045. Because I think it's pretty important here. There should be more demand so that's in, let's see, I think here, materials, reaction, advanced moon materials. With the war happening and the Tech 2 ships going up in price, they're small ships, so I would personally have expected increased demand for this. Another thing is we don't really know what the rebalance is, so I would say that some people are bound to take the gamble on these advanced moon materials. But here, for instance, crystalline carbonite actually going back down a little bit to 190, although we went up to 214, so a nice little spike here like mid last month. Right now we're going back down. Another possibility, of course, is that to fund the war, stocks are being sold. That's possible as well. So crystalline carbonite not at the lowest point, but definitely down in price at the moment, being sold for 180. Buyers are at 167. You know, a buy order below 180 for crystalline carbonite, I think looking at the entire chart, is not a bad pickup. Fermionic condensates hovering at 80k and staying at a high place, 80,000 for the sellers, 78,000 for the buyers. I wouldn't make a move on this one if you look at this chart, of course. Ferrite carbide next, actually going up in price a little bit, and unfortunately going up in price from a decently average 150 looking. So here also 174 for the sellers, 170 for the buyers. I would say that this is a high price, not the gamble I would take just yet. Ferrogel also pretty high in price at the moment, 41,600. So again, not one that I would consider to be one where I should invest, although here the median deal price is going down in price here. Maybe you should keep an eye on these on the next few days. If my theory holds up that there is some of these stocks that are being sold to fund the wars, then, you know, maybe an opportunity could be in the works here. This is definitely an unusual pattern on the median daily prices for an increased price like that, so keep that in mind. Fullerites next at a 1-year high, so going for 905, buyers at 894, so that's definitely not really something that I would consider an opportunity either, and this is actually starting to hold true with my prediction here. Take 2 losses in the war, so increased demand, and of course speculation, preparations for the changes to moon mining in the winter expansion. Hypersynaptic fibers exactly up to 13,500, buyers are at 13,000 as well, 1-year high once again. So if the last couple of times that I checked on these you actually spotted some opportunities, then yeah, keep in mind that some of these are definitely spiking up. Nano transmitters 4,000 above average, I would say, even at a high trade range at the moment, so nope, doesn't look that interesting to me. Non-linear metamaterials at the tail end here going down in price, but again definitely in the high trade range, closer to 25 than to 20,000 ISK. Well, not actually here on the sellers, 23,000 and 21.6 thousand for the buyers. So that's a downward trend here, but it's definitely not a one-year low, where I would say, yeah, go ahead and try to pick those up. Phenolic composites also going down a little bit in price here at the tail end. Here, another one, photonic metamaterials, 1 year high at 15,000 ISK and staying there apparently. Plasmionic metamaterials, that is quite interesting, of course. 10k here, 12.5k currently. 23,000 for the sellers of plasmionic metamaterials. Great sell opportunity if you happen to have some of those lying around. Ceramic fibers just coming back down from a 1 year high at 450. Going back down, currently being traded for less than 400. Nope, just 404. 405 for the sellers, 382 for the buyers. So still pretty high price at the moment, but also having to give some ground after reaching a 1 year high. Terahertz metamaterials definitely still trading at a very high trade range. The titanium carbides went up in price to 63, used to be like less than 200. So definitely here again, I would say this, you don't see it in the volume, so there must just be some back and forth here that is driving these prices up. I would say, yeah, investors getting ready for the moon mining changes. And then tungsten carbide once again at a 1 year high. Quite a few of those are at 1 year highs, so I would say that there is definitely some people that are making their moves in the advanced moon materials. Keep in mind, some of these are pretty violent, so if they go back down and they overshoot a little bit, that's maybe your time to pick those up. But if you want in on the craze that is very likely to happen, not 100% sure, nothing is 100% sure, but that is very likely to happen towards the winter expansion with the changes to refining to the reactions and to moon mining, then you need to keep a very close eye on this market. Now, I would say if you don't check it weekly, that's your absolute minimum. I would almost say try to check this daily if you want in on still want in on some of that stuff. It's gonna be decently risky, especially considering some of these are already up to 1 year highs, but it is, I think, the one aspect of the game where we know that CCP is working on changes, and CCP changes definitely make the market go quite crazy. So there you go, guys, keep that in mind as well. As always, when it comes to these, don't go crazy with the volumes, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but if you want in on it, then keep a very close eye on this market is what I would say at this point. And that's gonna be it for this ETH Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next time.